I'd like to call the Finance Committee meeting of Wednesday, October. Hey, it's been 8 months. It's been 8 months. Come on. All right, easy for me to say. Wednesday, October 24th at 9 a.m. Roll call, please.
Mr. Legess. Mr. Vickery. Mr. Washington. Mr. Stauffenberg. Mr. Hess. Mr. Mulcahy. Mr. Seroy. Mr. Hildebrand. Mr. Einfeld. Ms. Weber. Mr. Payton. Ms. Dunbar. Mr. Ritter. Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Zenz. Ms. Haas. Mr. Wheeler. Mr. Lear. We have a quorum.
Thank you. I have no public comment. Is there any public comment this morning? We have no presentation. Approval of the minutes. They're not ready. You got 2 days. You better hustle. All right. First item on the agenda. Then after that is the insurance update. Mike Lynch. Mike just had a birthday, turned 65, and he's now on Medicare, getting insurance a lot cheaper.
Yeah, I got it figured. It's $800 a month.
Hey.
Who cares where it comes from?
Why? I don't want to.
We're finished with all of the insurance matters relative to the renewals. But before I give you the final numbers, I wanted to go through something here, and I think you've got a pass out, but some comments before I go through that sheet. We've had a very successful past 12 months. It's just been excellent. I couldn't ask for any better experience. The loss ratio has improved dramatically. There are 4 areas that are just incredible. Inpatient facility has, between the current period, which is 12 months back from August, and then the prior period, better by 15.5%. The emergency room use has gone down 30.5%. The pharmacy usage has gone down 29%. And so, having said that, you should have this sheet in front of you.
All right.
And you'll see that in the center there's a black line. So, looking towards the top from the back line, that's the prior period. And then through the bottom is the current period that this sheet shows. You'll see total by experience period. Current period is marked. And then below that, the prior period. And if you'll move to the right of that, you'll see 2 numbers second to the end there. The prior period's experience ratio was 101.8. This period is 68%. So a very dramatic change. And just to put it in perspective, if you look at the prior period, I counted that there were 5 months that had above 100% loss ratios, and there were 7 under 100%, and they averaged about 84%. But currently, we've only had 2 months in this period that were above 100%, and the other 10 that are below 100% average 58%. So it's an incredible change around, and it will benefit the county greatly. The last comment on the sheet I wanted to make is if you go to the bottom, it says percentage of change. This just reflects those first numbers that I pointed out, but you'll see under the medical payments column, they're down overall 27.9. Managed pharmacy, that's down overall 30.2%. And then the total payments, which is everything, down about 27%. So again, this leads into to renewal. The last time I talked to you, we talked about 4.9%. Based on this experience, however, we went back to the marketplace. We could not find better numbers, but United Healthcare reduced the renewal increase from 4.9 down to 2.5.
Oh.
And so right now we sit on the 2.5 mark on 4 plans, And it should not necessitate any change in plans, messing with deductibles, co-insurance, co-pays. And so it's a testament to both the employees and the county to what, the hard work that's been put in. So I would say that right now that's the best number medically that we're going to see. And if we look at between the time we got the renewal and the time we got the final 2.5%, that's a savings of about $100,000 some odd dollars. So, looking backwards in 2017, some of the design changes, 2018 had to make more design changes. And then 2019, the figure I just gave you, there was about $1,500,000 worth of design changes and concessions the insurance carriers gave us in those 3-year periods. So I think the county's done extraordinarily well by its employees and relative to the medical plan. So, you'll be seeing these on, I think, a single sheet of paper later on to vote on in another meeting, but, we're giving you the overview right now. The employee voluntary dental plan, you don't have anything in front of you about this, but I'll just read these numbers. Its experience also has done very, very well, and the rates there will be going down by approximately 6%. So those are the voluntary employee dental rates. The voluntary vision plan, there will be no change in benefit and/or rate due to the fact this is the last year of its rate guarantee, and then next year it becomes part of what will go out for bids on. The employee basic group life insurance, there is no change, and the same thing applies there. It will go to the marketplace in 2020. Employee group, voluntary group term insurance, that's supplemental life, no change, and that will also go to the marketplace in 2020. And so overall, I think this is the best outcome. Andy had talked to us earlier in the year. We did solicit some self-funding quotes, but I think it was felt that, fully funded was the best rate model to use until the county was in a different position financially and could absorb, the ups and downs of self-funding. We think that, self-funding is probably the right approach, but it has to be met with, financial stability too. So next year, we'll look at all of those things again in terms of the funding mechanisms and the plan designs, and we'll go from there. And that's about all I think I have.
Great report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have
Yes,
any
sir.
questions? Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is good news, and I'm just a question of information. Can this be summarized and shared with the employees who made this possible, show them what happens when we do things correctly? And does that happen automatically?
We're going to put together a one-sheet report, and we'll pass it out. And if you guys want to get that out to the employees, by all means, I think we can put in it the things that have been done with the changing of the benefit structure. The addition of the HMO is another question that I think has had a very, very beneficial effect to some of these numbers. So yeah, I think that can be done, and we'll pass it back to you folks and getting it out. Yeah.
Fine.
I would like
Go ahead.
to make the recommendation. We're an oversight board, but the real kudos go to the employees, their supervisors, and I think it's important that a summarized version of what they've accomplished be distributed to them, either with their paychecks or however you distribute, email, something. But I think that's important. I'd like to make that recommendation that be done.
I think we can do that. Todd?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lynch, I appreciate all the good news, but I'm still not satisfied with a 1.5 increase after all the decreases that we've shown through the medical payments, the pharmacy use, and the total payments of 27%. I was hoping you'd come back with a number of 0, sir.
We asked.
And with that respect, I've heard grumblings in our counties, employees with the $10,000 deductible it's almost like people don't have insurance once a $10,000 deductible is put on. So, you know, I was hoping for a little bit better news. Maybe the committee feels differently, but I'm personally, I was hoping for a little bit better news after seeing these numbers, sir.
We asked to get it down to zero, and United Healthcare said that they would not do that, their underwriting department.
Was that because of our history or our current numbers?
I think the current period is, you know, they're a little shocked at it as well. I think that it's changed so dramatically, and that was the wording that they used to me, that I guess their confidence in its long-term outlook was problematic for them to say we'll go to zero. We were really hoping. One other thing I do want to correct, you said there is no $10,000 deductible plan. There is a $5,000 deductible
Okay.
plan, which has, I think, a 2 per family requirement. And so you are correct. The $5,000 is a high number, but those are ACA compliant plans, and that's what we see in the marketplace. So not arguing, just wanted to make
Thank
correction on that.
Thank you. And I know in this business you threw out the 4.9 so that it makes us feel a little better when you say 2.5.
Right.
But I would hope next year we could either get a zero or a deduction on that if we can continue this pace, sir.
If it continues, I think you'll have a confidence, in asking someone for that going forward.
Thank you.
Andy?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's important, and I would agree that zero would be just incredible at this point after the increases we've seen. I don't know, if you add all the initial increases we've seen over the past 5 years, it's like 80% that we've whittled down to be closer to, 14, 15 or something like that. So we've done a good job to get down for the employees actually too, to get that down, because we're picking up 75%, they're picking up 25. But it's also important to note that the employees have plans that have a lot lower deductible that they could have chosen. They're just more expensive. And when you look like at the HMO version, I think that's why you see your ER visits that are way down, is because now people have to go to primary instead of just showing up in the ER, and that's where a lot of cost is. So the plan design has driven some behaviors here, and the ones that have actually gone by the plan and have taken the most advantage, and they're getting a pretty darn good deal. So again, the 5,000, I mean, that's just what's out there in the world now. It's way different than it was. The other thing is, Mike works for us. He doesn't work for the insurance guys. And so he went back to the market and talked to all these different companies. They didn't get to zero. So he did actually beat up as many people as he could. And I tell you, he fights dirty. So, no, I'm just kidding. No.
The other fully funded carriers that were out there weren't even close.
Yeah.
2 of them wouldn't even give us numbers because they just said they couldn't get, and that's because they don't have the network discounts that some of the other carriers like United Healthcare. I would say that one of the carriers that we always wanted to utilize might have been Blue Cross. When you have somebody to balance, one quote off another, then you can have a fight. But when you don't have anybody to balance that off of, that's the tough part. So, they could have stood on 4.9, but when they saw this go from 72%, which I think was the last number that we had, down to 68, and really what you've got is, a quarter's worth of, 53, 54, and then a high of 81 in this last quarter on this current period. I think that's where they said, we're not confident that's going to continue, for the long term, but, we'll knock off half of the increase. And we most certainly would have loved to have had a zero. That was the golden, desire. So, and I would say to back up Andy's point, if you look at the first renewal we got after the 15 months, it came out at 24%. We got it knocked down to 20, and then after we did the plan designs, it was just a little under 3% that year. The next year in 2018, it was 27.9, so back to the drawing board, and you had to do that, and that's where, the hurt comes in, when you fellows are, remarking on the employees and what they have to suffer through, and I agree. But ACA mandated some of these, they're very high deductibles and high out of pocket, and that's what it is. We got that one knocked down too, and I think, Andy, that was around a 13% year. And then this year started at 4.9, getting it down to 2.5. So that's the history. Well, and the other half of the story, I don't want to talk too much, but we had in the previous period 8 large claimants. Right now, we're sitting on top of 5. If that trend continues, I think, knocking that down, that's another help too.
What is a large payment?
Something over
Over
50, well, some companies use 50,000, others use 100,000 as a marker saying that, you've got this many over that limit. But in this case, it's 3 claims, or 8 and 5 over 100,000.
Anybody else have any questions? Andy?
Just procedurally, these numbers came in, after agenda was put out. So we're gonna bring the full numbers to the full board to vote on, because obviously we have open enrollment on December 1st.
Right.
So this committee, we can't vote on it today, but he is reporting what the end of his work was. So the full board will have the vote here coming up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Next up, we have the Treasurer's Office, Nicholas Safacano. I'll need a motion to combine and approve the County Treasurer's Report for September 2018, the County Collector's Report for September 2018, and the monthly resolutions for November 2018. I need a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Washington, second by Mr. Zenz. This will be a voice vote. All in favor say aye. All opposed, same. Motion carries.
Morning, Mr. Chairman.
The hell, you don't want to sit next to him?
No,
Okay.
just teasing. Welcome to the new board members.
Yeah,
And
I'm glad you said that. I forgot to mention it.
yeah. I just want to say that we are getting ready for tax sale. We're publishing, I think, today in the Journal, and we've been publishing in some of the outlying papers, the delinquencies, which we're required to do. Tax sale will be on November 14th in this room. We're hoping to raise as much revenue as we did last year, which was good. I just want to take a minute, and I think whoever didn't know, we were supposed to honor some banks back in October, and I happened to not be available for that board meeting. I was sick. We'll see if Mike's insurance pays the bills. But I did want to say that we're going to do that at the next board meeting, and I just want to let everybody know how important the banks have been to my office. The amount of collection that the banks are doing is incredible. They're over $30 million that the banks are collecting for us, which if we had to do that in-house, we'd have to hire probably two more full-time staff to do that. So it's really been helpful. If I'm fortunate enough to continue in this role, we'll continue to educate people on the idea that you can go to a drive-through. You don't have to be a member of the bank. So it's a really great thing. And of course, the top 3 banks you would assume you probably would assume who they are: Homestar, Peoples, and Municipal. And of course, Midland now with their purchase of Centru. So that's where I'm at on tax sale and banks. Diane, I'm going to miss your smiling face and bugging me for my reports. Kelly, will you do that for me? And I know Kelly, so.
We're training her on bugginess.
Yeah, good, right. Good luck to you. Well, her more than you. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I don't think so. I guess there is. We have seen about a 15% increase in online transactions. So I'm really happy about that, because obviously that takes no labor to facilitate. And we're working with a new vendor right now. Well, we're not working with a new vendor. We're looking at new vendors. We think we can get the credit card charge down from 2.3%. Not a bunch lower, of course, but anything lower is good. In addition, and I may have mentioned this last time, if I didn't, I'll let you know, we will now have the ability next year to waive all duplicate bill fees, because you'll be able to print your official bill online for free. And you'll be able to print it and take it into the bank and pay with it. It'll have a barcode. So you'll be able to avoid the duplicate bill fee. So to the extent that we can reduce fees on customers, That's what we want to do. I prefer to reduce as many fees as possible. I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions? I know there's one more board meeting, but it's been awesome working with everybody on this board for 2 years. Depending on what happens in 2 weeks. I thought I'd say that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nick, I think you've done a tremendous job in the treasurer's office, and I hope you do continue your work, because it seems like you've taken what your office was and you've taken it outside of the box, so to speak, and just by being able to print your duplicate bill fees or print your bill off of online, I think is a wonderful asset to our taxpayers that might not have time, or maybe something happened to their bill. You know, going back to the online, what percentage of online payments are we getting now? I know you said it increased 15%, but out of your total number, where are we at on that? And I don't mean to put you on the spot with
We're probably
give
around
me a ballpark.
10%.
About 10% of
Yeah.
everything?
Yeah.
Would there going forward, do you think there'd be any way that we could reach out to advertise that a little better?
Absolutely. I think that the key to this office, besides running the office, is to really educate people on options. One thing I'd like to see, and I don't know who in here uses it, but I'm sure a fair amount do, is a bill pay, from your bank, where you could set up, you could automatically pay these bills. And at ACH out of your account. There's some questions on reverse charges and things of that nature if there's no money in your account. But that's something that we definitely want to do. I also want to really seriously look at a 6 payment plan, so we can chunk out the 2 installments into 6 pieces to help people with some of these higher tax rates to lower them. But to your point, I appreciate your comments and would say I have a phenomenal staff, and without them, I wouldn't be able to get it done, so kudos to them. Thank you for your comments.
Anyone else have any questions for Nick?
Oh, Carol, thank you for the apple pies. I was watching my weight, so I didn't eat any, but no, I'm teasing. They were very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Finance Department, Mr. McCarty. Thanks, Steve. How you doing?
Just don't get.
Yeah. Better be good news.
Good morning.
Morning.
All of you have received the copy either yesterday or in your packet today, so mainly updates today. If there's any questions, the sales tax didn't have as good as month as we've seen, but overall still over 200,000 higher year to date. And then had a question a few months ago about the city of Kankakee and their activity, and their activity changed in this most recent report in October from July collection. So if anyone's interested in that information. Income tax continues a positive trend.
I had a question, Steve. On the report under sales tax analysis by year, those figures, is that our portion of the county tax plus the quarter from everybody else?
Yeah, the first page, the sales tax analysis by year, is the total, and then the second page is how it breaks down for how it comes.
Well, I was trying to figure out
on the backside. So yeah, as far as unincorporated and the incorporated, is that what?
Okay, yeah. So when I look at Bradley, Kankakee, and Bourbonnais, they're all plus. So the countywide tax must have went down, and that's why we're in the negative position.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, from the previous year, the unincorporated was 118,000 in October last year, and it's 84,000
Okay,
this
yeah,
year.
that's what I
so
thought,
it's,
okay. You have a question, Ron?
Chairman, income tax analysis, is that the tax everybody pays when no other tax is applicable, or what is that?
Yeah, that would-
4.95 or whatever.
Right, the income tax, and then there's a portion that gets put into the pool, and then it's distributed by your population.
Say that again, so what is it?
It's distributed by population. I'm not sure the breakdown.
Just tell me
What the state takes, and then what they distribute, it goes into a pool, and then it's by your population.
you get a percentage of that from
percentage
your-
of it
is this
based
a
on
state
your-
income tax then?
Yeah,
Okay.
payroll income
Very
tax. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that the one that they threatened a few years ago not to send the counties anything? Is that the same one?
Well, right, they changed the percentage of what they
Right,
were distributing,
right.
and then they changed it again for the current budget in
Okay.
July. So we're starting to see changes to that as well. So
Okay. Anybody else have any questions on sales tax, income tax, use tax? Pardon me, George, will you use your microphone, please? After all these years, you ought to know better. Go
Did
ahead.
that percentage for the state go down or up?
for us, it went up. It was 10%. Then as far as got too many things going through my head, and it changed to 5%, but I'm not describing that accurately. But it was a positive for us and for everyone that receives it via population distribution.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, moving on. Cash flow, what we're gonna talk about?
All right. Update cash flow through the end of September. In a larger picture, working on this out through 2023. We're preparing to begin our conversations with our local banks on our TAWs, our tax anticipation warrants. So we've spent a lot of time on this going forward, and we'll update the committee, as those discussions progress. So it's working on not only the TAW side, but also interfund payback, specifically highway fund and others. And so it is a process to continue to work on that and on the cash side. So as far as here and now, yeah, we updated, and I threw in the accounts payable as of yesterday, just to show if you compared it to 2017 accounts payable, we are much lower. The end of September didn't really show it because we had bond payments and I believe the health insurance sitting in there. But once we cleared those out in October here, there's significant. There's not a lot of accounts payable sitting in the system right now, so that's a great thing to be able to say after what we've been through.
Andy wants to say something.
So,
Andy?
yeah.
Sure, that was Steve. In his style, understates that a little bit. That's $2.2 million difference than a year ago. Our local vendors are getting paid. We prioritize that when the bills come in, we can pay them now, and we haven't been able to say that for quite a long time. And it's something we intentionally do. We're used to saying, okay, well, we're 60 days, and I'm trying to get that to 30. And so at times it will stretch out, especially when we get into that March, April, May, when we're not taking in tax revenue. But it's for the committee's sake. I haven't seen this since I've been on the board, even since 2012, where payables have been this low. So, Steve, is there any perspective there?
No, that's correct, and we're approximately between 30 and 45 days is what our average is right now. We haven't crossed 45 for a number of months here, so
That's great.
you know, it's a very positive thing. So,
Anybody else have anything on the cash flow? Where we at on the tax anticipation? Once we down to 1,000 now, or 1,500, or are we gonna see what they're gonna give us, or what are we at?
right, we're gonna have those begin those talks with them.
Right, okay.
Soon.
Maybe you could explain that a little bit, or do we wanna talk about that? For the new members of our committee.
Sure.
I was, I was trying to be non-transparent. I was just asking him about the tax anticipation warrants and when we start doing that, and then maybe if he could explain a little bit what we're doing for Jackie, Mike, or who's new on the committee, just exactly what those are and why we do them.
Sure. The tax anticipation warrants are a lien against our property tax cycle. At the November board, the full board will approve the coming year's tax levy request, and then that is the dollar amounts that will have a lien put on them. And as far as tax anticipation warrant dollar amounts, I believe in 2012 or 2013, we did as high as 8 million tax anticipation warrants, and we were down to 5, and we did 5 for a couple of years, and then 4, 3, 2, or 2.5. And the time frame that it gets us through is mainly between December, January, and into May. We have a 3 payroll month, usually March or April, which is $3 million of payroll in a single month. So that's a dry time for us as far as cash flow, and the tax anticipation warrants help us bridge that gap of cash flow through that time. They're paid back incrementally in July and September, coinciding with the property tax distributions. And so that's the next cycle. It's an annual thing, so because it's done on a single tax levy year. So that's what we're beginning to work on for next spring. You know, the time frame for next spring at this point. So.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wheeler.
If I could mention that historically we were pulling those in, you know, November, December, January, and now they're coming later, February. You know, we need to borrow less money for less amount of time, which is an indication that our cash flow is better throughout the rest of the year. So just to mention that too as well, it's not propping up bad decisions. We're actually borrowing less for a shorter amount of time, and the goal is to get about a $6 million, $7 million surplus in the bank, so you don't have to borrow from yourself and from outside banks to get through the year. Because it's really not a surplus. It's there to pay the bills when there's no taxes coming in. And I hope it makes sense the way I put that. So.
Okay. Anybody else have anything on the budget?
Yep. No other questions on the cash flow. The budget document that you have, there was one change since the last month's meeting. It is on page 2, and it's bolded for the public defender budget. It was adjusted to $740,000. Everything else, I believe, stayed the same. So we wanted to bring that back. Still awaiting the 911 budget documentation to add to the budget, to the entire budget document. But for your review, that was the only thing that I'm aware of, Chairman Wheeler.
Where's that at? We got the right one?
That's page 1. Actually, the last page of
Okay.
your packet.
Okay, thank you. So that's the only,
Yeah, Chairman Wheeler.
go ahead. Mr.
I have to
Reed.
make the motion to amend, because we approved the budget last meeting. So when we go to the full board, this is amending the budget here, so that'd be the motion.
Is that the only amendment
That's
we
the
got
only
is?
one, it's the
okay.
7-4, and then I can explain if there's a second, then we can.
Right, all right, we have a Ms. Dunbar with a second.
The, we received a grant from, the federal government, for drug court to expand it to actually double the size, which requires, a full-time public defender to handle all the specialty courts, veterans courts, drug court, mental health, all of those things will be handled that way. So that's why we had to amend this, to take a part-time basically to full-time, and then to still keep a part-timer, available for all of the other guardian ad litem work. So we met with the judges, public defender. It's the grant doesn't cover salaries, so we had to up that because the caseload is doubling, which is a good thing, keeping people out of jail and going through drug court.
Well, that saves us money too.
Yeah, it saved us money too, so that's the explanation why it changed.
Ron?
Just a quick question, I missed it last time, and maybe it's an unfair question. Central Services, whatever that consists, has been in the 220, last year was 215, and our new budget took it to 165. Doesn't appear to be any precedent for that. Did something change, or nobody knows because I caught you off guard?
No, that's, there was office supplies and some paper, that evolved, over a few years, in that department that wasn't really intended to do, and so there was discussion with the departments to Central Services mainly for specific things. There's audit expenses, there's maintenance contracts that for some of our software that for multiple departments that interact in multiple areas, and it ended up it kind of evolved into where everybody was taking advantage of charging their office supplies for their department and stuff, and it kind of evolved so that we've looked at changing that back in only specialty type of items potentially going there, so that's why it changed.
Okay, any other questions or discussion on the motion? We'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mr. Washington. Aye. Mr. Mulcahy. Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Ms. Weber. Mr. Payton. Ms. Dunbar. Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Zenz. Ms. Haas. Mr. Wheeler. Motion carries.
Okay. Oops, next up is,
Can I say a few words?
Sure, go ahead.
Before I go, I thought it'd be appropriate, since Diane started in finance originally, to say a few words before she goes, since this is the finance committee and she started in finance. Many of you may not know that one of the special things that Diane did when we were going through the worst of the financial process, the crisis, is she was willing to split her time and as a full-time employee to take on the role of 2 full-time jobs and do it part-time, so in order to help save money. And the first split was between finance department and the treasurer's department, and then the second split was between finance and administration, and what she currently was doing, retiring from full-time. So so to me, that was a special commitment and a willingness to help through that difficult time, and that was not an easy task to take on both of those responsibilities in 2 departments, 2 completely different jobs, two bosses, everything, and to do that for half the time you've been here, or possibly it was a long time. It's been a while, yeah. So potentially more than half the time that she worked here, that's what she did. So I think that's a special angle and behind the scenes look at what was attempted that doesn't always get recognized and is very difficult. And Diane did it always with a smile, and I know it wasn't easy. And so we appreciate that very much, and I wanted to recognize
Thanks, Steve.
Alrighty.
Next up, Sheriff's Department.
Thank you, Steve.
Sheriff Mike Downey.
Good morning.
Morning.
I really don't have a whole lot. Obviously, on the agenda, there's nothing other than update. Our out-of-county housing has remained consistent, which for us is a good thing. And actually, our U.S. Marshal population has increased significantly over the last couple months. I think at one point we were around 150. We are now up over 180 per day. So that, from the standpoint of housing and the money that generates, I think that's a positive thing. Corrections still continues to do a wonderful job with housing all of our inmates and detainees. So it's a credit to them and Chief Kalwenzu and Assistant Chief Schultz who are operating the jail. One thing of concern, which is somewhat shocking really, is our local population has increased a little bit. The last couple months it has inched up well over 280 per day. That becomes problematic on a number of issues. Number one, that's primarily who we're responsible for when it comes to operating the jail is our own inmates. And with that number high, that is, something that we certainly are mindful of and will continue to monitor. We thought that number would go down a little bit with the Bail Reform Act, and that hasn't seemed to be the case, which is somewhat surprising to all of us. But we will continue to monitor that, and hopefully we can get that to a number that is more workable on our end. For those of you that may not pay attention to our sworn division, for one reason or another, it doesn't get covered in the paper much. We did have a homicide a month ago. We had another shooting, and as we've said a number of times, unfortunately, we are unable to predict when violent crime and serious crime happen. We can do some preventative stuff, but we certainly don't have a crystal ball to know when these things happen, and that puts quite a burden on our detectives and the rest of our staff. So those things are going on the sworn side. If you recall, a couple years ago, I came to this committee and the Criminal Justice Committee talking about our phone system. And it's quite, I don't want to say quite expensive, but there is certainly a cost to our phone system. With the situation we were in a few years ago, we said, you know what, we'll try to work through our phone issues, although they certainly are significant when you're dealing with an operation like ours. We did manage to muddle through with the existing phone system, and through, I think, eBay and looking for used boards for our phone system, we've been able to make it. Unfortunately, as we continue and our maintenance department muddles through eBay looking for these boards that fit our phone system, and for the last 2 months we've been unable to find one, so we don't have a backup right now. So we are exploring some options to get another price that I will certainly bring back to the Criminal Justice Committee to let everybody know. Hopefully, like everything else in technology, prices come down a little bit, but we know that that's no guarantee.
Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you. And I don't know the requirements that you have, Sheriff, but I know that we just had to replace a whole unit here at the county building. I don't know if it's a thought that we get a similar or same unit that uses the same boards for spares and backups and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I think that was the plan back then, was to make it consistent throughout the county. So I think that would be certainly something that we want to do.
Because we were caught without a backup, and so
Right.
was our supplier.
Right.
So that's why our phones were down for a day.
And that's kind of the position we're in now. So we, just want to hopefully avoid the possibility of our phones going down. And the minute, as what happened with the county a couple weeks ago when the phones went down in the county building, everybody went ballistic saying, "Oh, I can't talk to anybody at the county." Well, the phones were down. I mean, unfortunately, that happens. So, and it could happen to us. But we are certainly aware of it, and we're working on it. And again, 2 years ago, we were trying to be cognizant of our financial situation countywide, and so now I think it might be time to explore that option to see where we're at. So,
Anybody else have any questions for the sheriff?
I would just say one more thing with Andy. He did a great job at the State of the County meeting today, and I think it's a good thing that everybody on this board is doing. Every department head, and it's. You did a nice job, Andy. Appreciate it.
Next up, Auditor's Office, Jake Lee. We don't vote on any of his monthly claims. We don't do. We do? It's not written. What is it? What am I doing? I need a motion to approve the monthly claims. Mr. Payton, Mr. Washington, and that's a roll call. So bossy. Did you have a question? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jackie.
I don't have any objection, but if there's any payments made to my organization, to the Helen Wheeler Center, I would just need to abstain from that.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Mulcahy.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Ms. Weber. Mr. Payton. Ms. Dunbar. Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas. Mr. Wheeler. Motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Just would like to welcome, as the treasurer did as well, our new board members who are here, and I really appreciate that abstention, because that is something we talked about for a long time, and we would hope that we continue to recommend that the board would not approve this stuff after the fact, because a lot of times people don't have that opportunity, and checks have already been cut, payments have been made, and it's all grouped together. So that is, I'm thankful that you were mindful of that, Ms. Haas. So thank you. Other than that, if there are any questions, there's not much this month that is controversial, I guess.
Anybody having questions for the auditor? Go ahead.
Is it possible, I guess I would just go on record that if there are future, in the event that I may forget to abstain, go on record for any future as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a good day.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on. Any other business? Any old business? Mr. Wheeler?
Motion to adjourn.
No, you're out of order. You're out of order. We have a couple more things. Any new business? Okay. Diane wanted to say something before we adjourn, but before we do that, I'd just like to say a few words, because many of you know, back last February, I had a heart attack, and I was laid up for a couple months, and this is politics and all that stuff, but a lot of us become friends too. And I was in the house for a couple, 2 or 3 months, not being able to get out, and I was going stir crazy, but there was not one day that went by that Diane didn't call me or text me to see how I was doing or what have you. So, and I can't tell her how much I appreciated that. She never brought me any food or anything, but Yeah, I couldn't eat nothing anyway. So go ahead, Diane wants to say a few words.
Well, my last meeting, I wish I had counted up all that I've had. Steve was right. I've been here 6.5 years, 3 in November with the county board. I just wanted to thank everybody again. I did it at county board, but just thank everyone for the 6.5 years. And I think I'm leaving you in good hands. Kelly Bilak, she will be my replacement. And I only have a week to train her, so just be patient because I'm not going to be able to train her everything. But I told her just feel free, ask questions, you know, don't be afraid to ask. But I think she'll do well. They take a little time just to get used to the things I'm not able to cover with her this week. So welcome, Kelly.
Thank you.
And thank you all again.
And Mr. Ritter, you had something?
Yes, Mr. Mulcahy would like to make a motion.
Mr. Mulcahy.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, what can I do for you?
All these years I trained you and you still screw it up. Hey, make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Mulcahy, second. Ms. Dunbar? All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.